The girl never screamed. She only raised 3 fingers, and the German shepherd understood. Just after midnight, rain slid down the windows of a lonely gas station outside Maple Falls, Oregon, turning the glass into sheets of trembling silver. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The coffee machine hissed in the corner. Somewhere behind the counter, a small radio played an old country song too softly to matter. Emily Carter stood near the candy aisle in a pale blue raincoat that hung past her wrists, her blonde hair damp at the ends, her white sneakers leaving small wet marks on the tile. She was 11 years old, though her eyes looked older in that quiet, watchful way children get when they have learned to measure every breath before taking it. Beside her stood Caleb Turner, smiling at the clerk, speaking gently, politely, like a man who had nothing to hide. He kept one hand near Emily's shoulder, never gripping, never pushing, just close enough to remind her that he was there. The clerk barely looked up. People passed through at night all the time. Tired fathers. Truckers. Families heading home late from Portland. A quiet man with a quiet girl did not seem like trouble. Then the bell above the door gave a thin metallic chime, and Officer Daniel Brooks stepped in from the rain with his K-9 partner at his left side. Brooks was 38, broad-shouldered, white, with close-cut brown hair, tired blue eyes, and the stillness of a man who had once worn a Marine uniform and had never fully taken it off inside his heart. His jacket was dark with rain. His boots carried the scent of wet asphalt. At his side walked Rex, a full-grown German shepherd with a black and tan coat, amber eyes, and ears sharp enough to catch a whisper from across a room. Rex did not move like a pet. He moved like a promise. Calm. Measured. Listening. Brooks came in for coffee after a long patrol, but Rex stopped before they reached the counter. His head turned. His eyes found Emily. For one breath, the whole station seemed to narrow around that child. Emily looked at the dog, not at the officer. Not at the clerk. Not at the man beside her. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Then, slowly, under the cover of her oversized sleeve, she placed 3 fingers against the inside of her wrist. It was small. Almost nothing. A motion someone could miss 100 times and forgive themselves for missing. But Rex saw it. His ears tipped forward. His body grew still in a way Brooks recognized from another life, from checkpoints and dark roads, from nights when silence meant more than noise. Caleb kept talking. He told the clerk they were headed north. Said Emily was tired. Said her mother was waiting. His voice was smooth as warm glass, but Emily's breathing changed when he said mother. Rex took one step toward her. Brooks glanced down. Easy, boy, he murmured. Rex did not sit. Outside, thunder rolled low over the highway, and the lights flickered once. Emily's eyes stayed locked on the dog as if she had thrown her whole heart across the room and was waiting to see whether anyone would catch it. Rex caught it. And in that lonely gas station, before anyone understood why, the police dog quietly stepped between the girl and the door. Daniel Brooks had learned, long before he became a police officer, that fear did not always make noise. Sometimes it stood still. Sometimes it smiled because it had been told to smile. Sometimes it hid its hands inside sleeves and waited for one living soul to notice. Years earlier, before Maple Falls, before the badge, before the quiet patrols through rain-dark streets, Brooks had been a United States Marine assigned to security work outside a relief center overseas. There had been a boy there, maybe 10 years old, standing near a fence with dust on his cheeks and a look Brooks never forgot. The boy had made a small motion with his hand, nothing dramatic, nothing clear enough to stop a whole convo. Brooks had seen it, and looked away for 1 second because orders were moving fast, radios were talking, and adults were telling him everything was fine. The boy survived. That mattered. But the memory still lived in Brooks like a small stone under the skin, a reminder that the smallest signal can carry the heaviest truth. That was why he trusted Rex. Not because Rex was trained to obey, but because Rex noticed what men like. Brooks sometimes missed. The German shepherd stood now in the aisle of the gas station with rain dripping from the ends of his coat, his black saddle gleaming under the fluorescent lights, his amber eyes fixed on Emily Carter. Brooks felt the old Marine part of him wake up, quiet and sharp. "Rex," he said softly, not as a command, but as a question. Rex did not look back. His paws were planted on the pale tile. His ears pointed forward. His breathing slowed. Caleb Turner noticed then. The smile on his face stayed where it was, but something behind it shifted. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked, turning with easy politeness. Brooks looked from Caleb to Emily, and then to the space between them. "Just checking on my partner," Brooks said. "He gets particular about storms." The clerk gave a nervous laugh from behind the counter, but nobody else moved. Outside, a truck passed on the highway, tires whispering through standing water. Emily lowered her hand and tucked it deeper into her sleeve. Caleb placed 2 bills on the counter for bottled water and a pack of gum they had not opened. "Long night," he said. "We should get going." He spoke to Brooks, but his hand drifted toward the glass door. Rex shifted before Caleb took a step. Not fast. Not loud. Just enough to close the path. Brooks watched Emily's face. She did not flinch at the dog. She flinched at the word going. That was the second signal. Brooks felt it settle into him. A child afraid of leaving was different from a child afraid of a stranger. Caleb gave a short laugh, thinner this time. "You mind calling him off?" Brooks kept his voice calm. "Rex only blocks a door when he has a reason." Emily's eyes lifted again. This time, she looked at Brooks. There was no plea in her face that anyone could point to. No tears. No cry for help. Only a terrible stillness, the kind that asks a question without words. Brooks had missed that question once in his life. He would not miss it again. The space inside the gas station seemed to shrink around them, bright and humming, while rain pressed its fingers against the windows as if the whole night wanted in. Daniel Brooks kept one hand near his belt, not touching anything, not making a scene, only standing with the kind of stillness he had learned in places where sudden movement could turn fear into chaos. Rex remained between Emily and the exit, his tail level, his ears high, his body calm but impossible to ignore. He did not bare his teeth. He did not growl. That was what made it worse for Caleb Turner. A barking dog could be dismissed as nervous. A quiet dog with a purpose could not. "Officer," Caleb said, forcing a smile toward the clerk, as if asking the room to agree with him. "My niece is exhausted. We have been on the road for hours. I would appreciate it if you stopped frightening her." Brooks looked at Emily when Caleb said niece. Her shoulders tightened beneath the pale blue raincoat. Just a little. Just enough. Rex saw it too. His nose lifted, catching something beneath the smell of coffee, wet pavement, motor oil, and old candy wrappers. Fear had its own scent. It was sharp and cold, like pennies in rainwater. Emily took half a step closer to the snack shelf, away from Caleb, and pretended to study a row of chocolate bars. Her fingers trembled once, then disappeared again into her sleeve. Brooks moved to the counter and picked up an empty paper cup, giving the moment room to breathe. "Where are you folks headed?" he asked, casual enough for a roadside conversation. Caleb answered too quickly. "North. Family emergency." "Where north?" "Seattle." Brooks nodded slowly. Maple Falls was not the most direct route to Seattle from anywhere Caleb had claimed to be coming from, but he did not say that. He only watched Emily's reflection in the dark window behind the coffee machine. She was looking at Rex again. Not Brooks. Not the door. Rex. The German shepherd lowered his head by 1 inch, as if answering her without sound. Emily slid her left sleeve up just enough to reveal the inside of her wrist. There, in faded blue marker, was a small star. Brooks felt the air leave his chest. He knew that star. 3 months earlier, he and Rex had visited Cedar Ridge Elementary for a child's safety presentation. Brooks had stood in a gym filled with folding chairs and nervous laughter, teaching children that help did not always have to be shouted. He had shown them a simple signal. 3 fingers to the wrist. A star drawn where a trusted adult could see it. A way to say, I need help, when words were not safe. Emily had been in that gym. He remembered her now. Front row. Blonde braid. Quiet smile. Rex remembered first. That truth landed gently and heavily at the same time. Caleb shifted toward Emily. Come on, sweetheart, he said, his voice soft enough to sound kind to anyone who was not listening closely. Emily did not move. Rex did. He stepped forward, placing himself at Emily's side now, not touching her, not crowding her, simply choosing her. The clerk stopped breathing for a second behind the register. Brooks set the paper cup down untouched. Sir, he said, voice low and steady, I need you to stay right where you are. Caleb's smile finally weakened. Outside, lightning flashed over the wet highway, bright enough to reveal a telephone pole near the gas pumps. A sheet of paper was taped there beneath plastic, shaking in the wind. Brooks could not read the words from inside, but he could see the photograph. A blonde girl. A pale blue coat. The same silent eyes. Brooks did not turn his head toward the telephone pole right away. He had learned that truth, when frightened, could vanish if chased too quickly. Instead, he kept his eyes on Caleb Turner and let the reflection in the window tell him what he needed to know. The rain blurred the paper outside, but the photograph stayed clear enough. Emily Carter. Missing. Last seen near Cedar Ridge Elementary. Pale blue raincoat. Blonde hair. 11 years old. The same child stood 5 feet from him, still as a candle flame in a room without air. Sir, Brooks said, keeping his voice even, I am going to ask you one more time to stay where you are. Caleb gave a small laugh that did not belong to his face. This is ridiculous. You are making a mistake. Maybe, Brooks said. Then let us clear it up slowly. Rex stood beside Emily now, so close that the edge of his shoulder nearly touched her knee. The dog did not lean on her. He only offered the warmth of his presence, the way a porch light offers itself to someone lost in the dark. Emily looked down at him, and for the first time that night, her lower lip trembled. Caleb noticed. His eyes moved toward her, sharp for only a second before the polite mask settled back over him. Emily, he said gently, tell the officer we are fine. The sound of her name coming from him changed the room. The clerk behind the counter looked up fully. Brooks felt it too. Caleb had said niece earlier, family emergency, mother waiting. But he had not said her name until now. Emily swallowed. Her fingers curled around the strap of her small purple backpack. Rex lowered his nose to that strap, then looked at Brooks. It was not a command. It was a question. Brooks gave the faintest nod. Rex took the strap carefully between his teeth and pulled, not hard, not enough to frighten her, just enough for the backpack to slide from her shoulder and land softly on the tile. Caleb stepped forward. That is enough. Rex lifted his head and placed himself between Caleb and the bag. Brooks moved at the same time, calm and controlled, one palm raised. Do not reach for it. The clerk's hand hovered near the phone. Outside, another flash of lightning washed the pumps in white. The missing poster snapped against the pole like a small flag trying to be heard. Emily stared at the backpack on the floor. Something inside had slipped halfway out. A folded photograph. Brooks crouched slowly, never taking his attention from Caleb, and picked it up with 2 fingers. The picture showed Emily standing beside a woman with the same blonde hair and tired blue eyes, both of them smiling in front of a red brick school building. On the back, written in a child's careful handwriting, were 4 words, Mom, come find me. Brooks felt something in his chest go very still. Rex had already known. The dog pressed his body gently against Emily's legs, and that was when the child finally moved. She reached down, burying one small hand in the thick fur at his neck. No scream came. No dramatic cry. Only a whisper so faint the rain almost swallowed it. Please do not let him take me. Brooks stood. The old guilt inside him, the memory of the signal he had once missed, seemed to fall away like rain from a roof. He will not, he said. And for the first time all night, Emily believed someone. The promise changed the air inside the gas station. It did not make the rain stop, and it did not make Caleb Turner disappear, but it gave the room a center. Emily stayed close to Rex, her fingers buried in the thick fur at his neck, and the German shepherd stood like he had been placed there by something older than training. Officer Daniel Brooks kept his body angled between Caleb and the child, his voice low enough not to shake her. "Maya," he said to the clerk, reading her name tag without looking away. "Lock the front door and call dispatch. Tell them Officer Brooks has located a missing child at the Highway 20 gas station. Tell them the child is safe." The clerk, a woman in her late 20s with tired eyes and a silver cross at her throat, moved carefully, hands trembling just enough to show she understood the weight of the moment. The lock clicked. The sound was small, but to Emily it sounded like a gate closing between her and the dark. Caleb looked toward the door, then toward the rain-washed windows. He was still smiling, but it no longer reached any part of him. "You cannot hold me here," he said. "I have done nothing wrong." Brooks did not argue. Some lies grew stronger when fed with words. He only pointed to the far end of the aisle. "Stand over there. Keep your hands where I can see them." Caleb hesitated, then obeyed, moving slowly past the soda cooler, past the rack of road maps, past the cardboard display of windshield fluid. Rex watched every step. His ears did not lower. His tail did not move. Emily watched him too, and Brooks realized the child was taking her courage from the dog one breath at a time. Outside, the missing poster continued to flutter against the telephone pole, its plastic cover shining under the gas pump lights. Brooks had seen hundreds of posters like that in his career, faces printed on paper, names reduced to alerts, but this was different. The face had answered back. The face was standing alive beside a police dog, trying to remember how to breathe. Brooks lowered himself to one knee, keeping enough distance so Emily could choose whether to come closer. "Emily," he said gently. "My name is Daniel. You are not in trouble. Your mother is looking for you." At the word mother, Emily's chin crumpled. She did not cry loudly. She did not fall apart. She only pressed her forehead against Rex's shoulder and let one quiet sob pass through her. Rex turned his head and touched his nose to her sleeve, careful as a prayer. Brooks felt his throat tighten, but he did not let his voice break. "You did everything right," he said. "The signal. The star. Looking at Rex. All of it." Emily lifted her eyes. "He remembered?" Brooks looked at the German shepherd, at the rain shining on his coat, at the calm intelligence burning in those amber eyes. "Yes," he said. "He remembered before I did." Red and blue lights began to glow faintly beyond the wet glass, soft at first, then brighter as patrol cars turned in from the highway. The sound of tires on water came closer. Caleb's face lost its practiced calm. Brooks stood, still steady, still quiet, while Rex remained beside Emily. No one needed to raise their voice. No one needed to rush. Help had arrived in the most ordinary way, through a locked door, a careful call, and a dog who had listened when a child could not speak. The first patrol car stopped beneath the gas station canopy, its tires sending a thin spray of water across the concrete. Then another pulled in behind it, red and blue lights washing over the windows, turning the small store into a chapel of shifting color. Emily pressed closer to Rex when the doors opened outside, but the German shepherd did not move away from her. He simply turned his head, recognized the uniforms, and stayed where he was needed most. Officer Daniel Brooks raised one hand through the glass to slow everyone down. No sudden rush. No crowded voices. Not around a child who had been brave in silence. Deputy Laura Mitchell entered first, a calm woman with silver at her temples and the soft-footed patience of someone who had spent years speaking to frightened families at kitchen tables and school parking lots. Her eyes moved from Caleb Turner to Emily, then to Rex, and something in her expression softened. "We found her," she whispered into her radio, and the words seemed to travel farther than the signal itself, out through the rain, down the highway, across every mile a mother had spent praying. Caleb stood near the soda cooler, pale now beneath the fluorescent lights, his hands visible, his voice suddenly smaller as he tried to explain. He spoke of confusion, of paperwork, of a misunderstanding. He used the kind of words that sounded neat from far away and empty up close. Brooks let the other officers handle him carefully and calmly, without shouting, without spectacle. Emily did not need more noise. She needed the world to become gentle again. As Caleb was guided away from the aisle, Rex shifted only once, placing his body between Emily and the movement, not because danger remained, but because trust sometimes needs a wall even after the door is closed. Emily watched the man leave through the front entrance, watched the rain swallow his shape beyond the glass, and for the first time her shoulders lowered. It was such a small motion that no one cheered. But Brooks saw it. Rex felt it. The clerk, Maya, wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist and pretended to straighten the gum display. Deputy Mitchell crouched a few feet away from Emily, not too close. "Hi, sweetheart," she said. "Your mom is on her way. She is safe. She knows you are here." Emily's face changed when she heard that. Not with a smile, not yet. It was too early for joy. It was the look of someone who had been holding a heavy door shut and had finally heard help on the other side. "Can Rex stay?" she asked. Her voice was barely more than breath. Brooks looked at his partner. The German shepherd had lowered himself to the tile beside her shoes, his black and tan coat still damp from the storm, his amber eyes resting on her, as if he had been assigned to guard one small sunrise until morning came. "Yes," Brooks said. "Rex can stay." Emily sank down beside him, folding her knees under the blue raincoat, and laid her hand on his shoulder. She did not wrap her arms around him at first. She just touched him, testing whether safety was real. Rex rested his chin on his front paws and exhaled, slow and warm. Outside, the rain began to ease. The thunder moved farther into the hills. Brooks stood near the counter with his hands still, watching a child breathe without counting the room for exits. He thought of that old signal from years ago, the one he had nearly missed, and then he looked at Rex, who had caught this one before any human heart could catch up. Sometimes grace did not arrive loudly. Sometimes it walked in on four paws, stood in front of a door, and refused to let a child disappear. Emily heard her mother before she saw her. Not the words, not the footsteps, but the sound a heart makes when it has been running through fear for too long and finally reaches the place where its child is breathing. A car door opened outside beneath the gas station canopy. Then another. The rain had softened to a fine silver mist, drifting through the red and blue lights like dust in a church window. Deputy Mitchell turned toward the entrance and gave a small nod to Brooks. He looked down at Emily. "She is here," he said gently. Emily's hand tightened in Rex's fur. For 1 second, she did not move. Safety can feel impossible when danger has been close for too long. It can stand right in front of you and still seem like a dream. Then the bell above the door chimed, and Hannah Carter stepped inside. She was in her mid-30s, white, with blonde hair pulled into a loose ponytail, her coat thrown over pajamas, her eyes red from hours of searching and praying. She stopped just inside the door when she saw Emily sitting on the tile beside the German shepherd. The whole store held its breath. Hannah covered her mouth with both hands. Emily stood slowly, as if her legs had forgotten what joy was supposed to do. "Mom!" she whispered. Hannah crossed the space carefully, not rushing enough to frighten her, but not slowly enough to hide how badly she needed to reach her child. Emily took one step, then another, and then she was in her mother's arms. There was no big sound. No perfect sentence. Just a small girl folding into the only place that still felt like home, and a mother holding her as if the whole world had been returned in one breath. Rex stood beside them, watching, his ears relaxed now for the first time since he had entered the store. Brooks looked away for a moment, giving them the privacy of dignity, though his own eyes burned. Maya stood behind the counter with one hand over the silver cross at her throat. Deputy Mitchell quietly spoke into her radio, her voice low and steady, confirming that Emily Carter had been reunited with her mother and was safe. Safe. The words seemed to settle over the gas station, touching the wet floor, the coffee machine, the candy aisle, the missing poster still trembling outside on the telephone pole. Hannah sank to her knees, holding Emily's face in her hands, checking every inch the way mothers do when love needs proof. "I am here," Hannah said. "I am right here." Emily nodded, but her eyes went back to Rex. "He knew, Mom." Hannah looked at the German Shepherd, then at Brooks. Gratitude moved across her face before words could catch it. "Thank you," she said, but Brooks shook his head softly. "Thank him," he answered. Emily reached for Rex again, and the dog stepped forward with quiet permission. She wrapped both arms around his neck, this time without fear, burying her cheek against his damp coat. Rex leaned into her just enough to let her know he was real. Outside, the storm finally broke open to silence. The highway lights shimmered on the wet pavement. Somewhere beyond the hills, morning was still hours away, but inside that small gas station, something like dawn had already begun. The minutes after the reunion moved slowly, as if the whole world had decided to lower its voice for Emily Carter. Deputy Mitchell brought a clean blanket from her patrol car and wrapped it around the girl's shoulders, but Emily kept one hand resting on Rex as though the German Shepherd was the anchor that kept the floor steady beneath her. Hannah sat beside her on the low bench near the window, holding her close, whispering simple things that did not need to be beautiful to be holy. "I am here. You are safe. We are going home." Daniel Brooks stood a few feet away, speaking quietly with the other officers, giving them only what mattered and saving the rest for later, when Emily would not have to hear adults turn her fear into official language. The station had changed around them. The same buzzing lights still hung overhead. The same coffee still burned in its glass pot. The same rain still traced silver lines down the glass. But everything felt different now, as if the place had become more than a gas station. It had become the exact point on the map where silence failed to bury the truth. Outside, one of the deputies removed the missing poster from the telephone pole and carried it inside to keep it from the rain. The paper was soft at the edges, the ink slightly blurred, but the photograph was still clear. Emily looked at it for a long moment. Then she looked at her mother. "I saw it when we pulled in," she whispered. "I wanted to run to it, but I was scared." Hannah closed her eyes and kissed the top of her daughter's head. Brooks did not interrupt. Rex lifted his head, sensing the change in Emily's breathing, and gently touched his nose to her sleeve. That small motion brought her back from wherever the memory had started to take her. She looked down at him and managed the faintest smile. "You saw me," she said. Rex blinked slowly, calm and certain, as if that had never been in question. Brooks felt those words move through him with a weight he could not explain. "You saw me." It was all any frightened soul had ever needed from the world. Not a speech. Not a rescue made grand by noise. Just one witness who noticed the small signal and cared enough to answer. Deputy Mitchell came back from the front door and nodded to Brooks. "Her grandmother is meeting them at the medical center. We will have a counselor there too." Brooks thanked her, then crouched near Emily once more, careful to keep his voice soft. "You remember the safety lesson at Cedar Ridge?" Emily nodded. "I was not sure anyone else would." Brooks looked at Rex, whose ears turned at the sound of his name without anyone saying it. "He did." Emily brushed her fingers through the darker fur along Rex's neck. "I thought dogs only knew commands." Brooks smiled, but it carried a sadness that made it honest. "The good ones know hearts, too." Hannah reached across the space and touched Brooks's hand. "You gave her that signal," she said. "You gave her a way to ask for help." Brooks could have said many things. He could have spoken of procedure, training, community programs, all the proper words that sounded clean and professional. Instead, he thought of the old memory he had carried for years, the child whose signal he had almost missed, the guilt that had followed him from one uniform to another. He looked at Emily, wrapped in a blanket, alive beside her mother, her hand safe in a German shepherd's fur. "Maybe she gave me one too," he said. Hannah did not ask what he meant. Some things are understood better when left unpolished. A little before 2 in the morning, the rain stopped completely. The doors opened, and cool Oregon air moved through the store, fresh with pine and wet asphalt. Emily rose with her mother, still tired, still shaken, but no longer alone. At the threshold, she turned back. Rex stood beside Brooks, steady and watchful. Emily lifted 3 fingers to her wrist one last time. Then, slowly, she moved those fingers over her heart. Brooks felt the gesture land in the quiet. Rex gave one soft breath, almost a sigh. And in that small roadside gas station, under lights that had seen 1,000 strangers come and go, a silent signal changed from a plea for help into a promise that she had been heard. 3 weeks later, the first clear sunlight of spring poured through the front windows of the Maple Falls Police Department, turning the polished floor gold and warming the row of plastic chairs near the front desk. Outside, the maples along Main Street had begun to open tiny green leaves, and the same town that had once surged through rain now moved through morning with a gentler rhythm. A mail truck rolled past. A school bus sighed at the corner. Somewhere in the distance, church bells marked 9 o'clock, soft and familiar. Daniel Brooks stood beside his desk with a paper cup of coffee cooling untouched in his hand, watching Rex sleep near the office doorway. The German shepherd had returned to duty like nothing had changed, but Brooks knew better. Dogs remembered in ways people did not always understand. Rex still paused whenever a child entered a room. He still lifted his head at the sound of small footsteps. He still watched hands, sleeves, wrists, the quiet places where fear might hide. Brooks did the same now. Not from suspicion, but from reverence. Some lessons do not arrive as lectures. Some arrive wearing wet sneakers in a gas station at midnight. The front door opened, and Rex was awake before the bell finished ringing. His ears rose. His head turned. Then his tail moved once, slow and certain. Emily Carter stepped inside with her mother beside her. She wore jeans, a clean white sweater, and new sneakers with blue laces. Her blonde hair was brushed into a simple braid, and her cheeks held a little more color than they had that night. She still moved carefully, as if the world was something she was learning to trust again, but she was walking forward. That mattered. Hannah Carter held her daughter's hand, not tightly, not as if keeping her from leaving, but as if reminding her that she never had to stand alone. Emily saw Rex and stopped. For a second, the police station faded from her face, and she was back under fluorescent lights, rain on the glass, one silent signal between terror and rescue. Then Rex rose. He did not run. He approached her with the same gentle dignity he had shown that night, paws quiet against the floor, amber eyes steady and warm. Emily knelt before he reached her. This time, she did not hesitate. She wrapped her arms around his neck and pressed her face into his black and tan fur. Rex leaned into her, careful with his strength, and rested his chin against her shoulder. Brooks looked down at his coffee cup because some moments deserved to be seen only halfway. Hannah wiped her eyes and smiled through it. She wanted to bring him something, she said. Emily pulled a folded bandana from her pocket. It was deep blue, stitched unevenly around the edges, the kind of work made by careful hands rather than a machine. In one corner were 3 small white stars. Emily held it up to Brooks. "My grandma helped me sew it," she said. Her voice was stronger now, still quiet, but no longer hidden. Brooks crouched beside Rex. "It is perfect." Emily tied the bandana gently around Rex's neck, smoothing it over his fur with both hands. Rex sat very still, as if he understood the honor of being decorated by a child who had found her way home. Deputy Laura Mitchell stepped from the hallway and stopped when she saw them, her face softening. Maya, the gas station clerk, had sent a card that morning, and it sat on Brooks's desk beside a small photo of the Cedar Ridge Elementary safety poster. The whole town had changed in small ways after that night. Teachers practiced the silent signal again. Parents listened more carefully. Officers visited classrooms with more patience. At the gas station, the owner had replaced the old buzzing lights and placed a small blue star sticker near the counter, not as a warning, but as a promise. Emily looked at Brooks then. "Do you still teach kids the signal?" she asked. "Yes," Brooks said. "More than ever." She nodded, then looked back at Rex. Good. There was a pause. Morning light fell across the dog's face, catching the amber in his eyes until they looked almost lit from within. Emily lifted 3 fingers to her wrist, the old sign, the one that had once meant help me. Then she moved those fingers to the 3 stars on Rex's bandana. Now it means something else, she said. Brooks waited. Hannah held her breath. Emily smiled faintly, and it was not the smile people give when they want others to stop worrying. It was small, real, and earned. It means I am safe now. No one answered right away. The station stayed quiet except for Rex's slow breathing and the distant hum of morning traffic beyond the windows. Brooks felt the old wound in him, the one carved by missed signals and years of regret, finally loosen its grip. He had spent so long believing redemption had to be loud, something won in a storm, something proven by strength. But here it was, smaller than he expected. A child's hand. A dog's patience. 3 stars on a blue bandana. Sometimes grace does not announce itself. Sometimes it simply returns to the place where fear once stood and leaves peace there instead. Emily rose, still holding Rex's fur for one more second before letting go. As she and Hannah walked back toward the sunlight outside, Rex remained beside Brooks, the blue bandana bright against his coat. At the door, Emily turned and gave one last wave. Not a signal. Not a plea. Just goodbye. Rex gave a soft breath, almost like a blessing, and Brooks rested one hand on his partner's head. The world would still have storms. There would still be frightened voices, quiet rooms, and signals too small for careless eyes. But that morning in Maple Falls, one truth remained clear enough to carry forward. No soul is truly silent when someone is willing to listen.